Why does loneliness physically hurt? Not why does it make you sad? Why does it produce something you feel in your chest, your stomach, your throat? Why the words we reach for are always physical ones? It stings, it aches, it hurts. Here's the answer, and then we'll spend the rest of this earning it. Think of a house with one smoke alarm. The fire starts in the kitchen, the alarm goes off. Another night it starts in the garage. Same alarm. Your brain is wired much the same way. It never built a separate system for social injury. It runs social loss through the same alarm your body uses for physical damage. That overlap is measurable. It's been tested with a painkiller, and it's there for a reason that held true for almost the whole of human history. That last part is the one worth staying for. A body doesn't grow an alarm for nothing. If disconnection trips your pain machinery, then being disconnected was once as dangerous as being injured. And the world that made that true is not the world you woke up in. Start with how we know. In 2003, Naomi Eisenberger and her colleagues at the University of California, Los Angeles published a study in the journal Science with a blunt title, "Does Rejection Hurt?" They slid volunteers into an MRI scanner and gave them a simple ball-tossing game on a screen. The volunteers were told they were playing two other people over a network. They weren't. The other players were a program, and it had instructions. After a few friendly throws, it stopped throwing them the ball. That's the whole cruelty of the experiment. Two cartoon hands in a machine that quietly stop, including you. First, one fact about pain. Pain isn't one thing. It arrives in two parts. There's the sensory part, which tells you where the damage is and what kind it is. Sharp, hot, deep, left hand. Then there's the part that makes pain matter. The part that turns a signal into an emergency and demands you stop everything and deal with it. Doctors call that second one the effective component. One half is the address. The other half is the alarm. Now the result. One region grew more active during exclusion, and the more distress a volunteer reported afterwards, the more active it had been. That region is the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. It isn't a loneliness center, and it isn't the part that locates damage in your body. It belongs to the alarm. So the mechanism is this. Social rejection doesn't borrow the address. It borrows the alarm. Nobody is claiming your body confuses a breakup with a broken wrist. You can tell them apart, and so can the scanner. What keeps showing up is that the circuitry which makes physical damage feel urgent is the same circuitry your brain reaches for when a social bond is threatened. Evolution didn't build a second alarm. It wired the new problem into the old bell, which makes a prediction so odd it sounds like a joke. If the two share hardware, then a drug that quiets physical pain should quiet the other kind too. In 2010, C. Nathan DeWall and a team including Eisenberger tested exactly that and published it in Psychological Science. 62 healthy volunteers took either 1,000 milligrams of acetaminophen a day, the drug sold as Tylenol or paracetamol, or a placebo. Every evening for 3 weeks they rated their own hurt feelings. The placebo group's ratings stayed flat. The acetaminophen group's ratings fell. Then they did the harder version. 25 volunteers took the drug or a placebo for 3 weeks, then played that same rigged ball game inside a scanner. In the people taking acetaminophen, the response in the dorsal anterior cingulate and the anterior insula was blunted. The pill hadn't changed what people said. It had changed what the alarm did. Be careful with this one. It's the most misreported result in the field, and it is not a treatment for loneliness. Nobody involved has ever said it was. It's a small study over 3 weeks, and taking painkillers for a social wound would trade a signal you need for liver damage you don't. It matters for one reason only. It's the overlap tested by prediction instead of described by analogy. Now the real question. Why would a body be built this way? John Cacioppo spent about 20 years answering that. He was a professor at the University of Chicago, And in 1992, he and his colleagues had named an entire field, social neuroscience, on the argument that you can't understand a human brain by studying it alone, because it didn't evolve alone. His answer was almost embarrassingly simple. The purpose of loneliness is like the purpose of hunger. Hunger takes care of your physical body. Loneliness takes care of your social body, which you also need to survive and prosper. Hunger isn't a flaw in your design. It's a signal, and it's supposed to feel bad because a signal that felt pleasant would be ignored. Hunger doesn't tell you food exists. It tells you something is missing from you, and it keeps escalating until you fix it. Apply that to people. Humans are a species with no useful claws, no speed worth mentioning, a long, helpless childhood, and a body that fails alone. Our entire survival strategy was other humans. Being outside the group wasn't lonely in the modern sense. It was fatal, slowly, and often quickly. So a creature that felt nothing when the group drifted away would drift away. A creature that felt something sharp would come back, and would be the one that lived to have children. That's the design. The pain isn't the malfunction. The pain is the mechanism working. You can see the inheritance in the genetics, and it's stranger than loneliness runs in families. Twin studies put the heritable share between 37 and 55%. A later genome-wide study in neuropsychopharmacology found 14 to 27%. Two methods, two answers, and the honest position is that the range is wide and the science isn't finished. But Cacioppo's reading is the part that lands. What's inherited isn't loneliness. It's how loudly the alarm rings in you. Some houses come with a smoke alarm more sensitive than the one next door, which is a setting, not a character flaw. Which explains what confuses almost everyone, including the people feeling it. Loneliness is not the same as being alone. If it were a head count, the cure would be a crowd. It isn't a head count. It's that gap, the one between what you want and what you've got. And it's why solitude can be the best hour of your week, and why a crowded party or a long marriage can be one of the loneliest places a person ever stands. Hunger works the same way. Your body isn't measuring how much food exists in the world. It's measuring what's missing from you. And there's a second half to Cacioppo's work that's much less comforting. An alarm left on too long starts to distort the thing it's protecting. You know the car in the street with the alarm so sensitive that the wind sets it off. After a while, nobody can tell a break-in from a breeze. Chronically lonely people become vigilant for social threat. They read a neutral face as cold and a short reply as a verdict. The system built to pull you back toward the group begins making the group look dangerous, which is the cruelest design flaw available, and one reason loneliness is so hard to walk out of alone. You can watch it running when nobody's conscious. Cacioppo's group had people sleep in their own beds wearing a monitoring cap, and found that lonely people got the same quantity of sleep as everyone else and a worse version of it. More micro-awakenings, poorer sleep efficiency, little surfacings toward waking all night that they mostly never remembered. The effect turned up again in a close-knit farming community where isolation in the ordinary sense was nearly impossible. Through the evolutionary lens, it stops looking like a malfunction. Someone on the edge of the group is someone nobody is watching over, and the most defenseless hours of a human life are the ones spent asleep. A brain that believes it's unguarded sleeps like a security guard who never quite goes under, because he doesn't trust that anyone else is watching the door. So you're carrying an alarm calibrated for a world where the alarm could be answered. For almost all of human history, if that signal fired, the fix was in walking distance. The group was the village. Repair meant crossing a clearing. The alarm was designed for a problem you could solve by moving toward other people, because there was nowhere else to be. Now look at the world it's firing in. The Surgeon General's own advisory puts the change in numbers. Since 2003, the average American spends roughly 24 more hours a month alone, and about 20 fewer hours a month socializing with friends in person. That's a whole extra day a month by yourself. Among 15 to 24-year-olds, in-person time with friends fell by nearly 70%, and that decline was well underway before the pandemic touched it. Nothing in your biology got the memo. The alarm still fires at the same threshold it always did. But the clearing is gone, the village is a feed, and the signal that used to mean walk toward the fire now arrives in an apartment where there's no obvious direction to walk. So it keeps firing. And an alarm that can't be answered doesn't fall silent, it goes chronic, which is the exact condition the system was never built to run in. That's the mismatch. The mechanism is ancient and it's working perfectly. The environment changed underneath it. And a chronic alarm has a body count, which is how a feeling became a medical fact. The number that changed the argument came from Julianne Holt Lundstad, who did something unglamorous and decisive. In 2010, she and her colleagues pooled 148 separate studies covering 308,849 people, followed for an average of 7.5 years, and asked one question of all of it. Does social connection predict how long you live? It does. People with stronger social relationships were about 50% more likely to still be alive at follow-up, an effect larger than the one for obesity or for physical inactivity. In May 2023, that work reached the top of the American public health system. The Surgeon General issued a formal advisory titled, "Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation," and stated that a lack of social connection can raise the risk of early death about as much as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. Hold that loosely. It's a comparison, not a measurement. An unfamiliar risk translated into a familiar one. Nobody counted cigarettes. What's underneath is narrower and still remarkable. Across large populations, isolation tracks with dying sooner, at a scale medicine takes seriously everywhere else. John Cacioppo didn't get to see that advisory. He died on the 5th of March, 2018, at his home in Chicago, at 66. The thing he'd argued for 2 decades became his country's official position 5 years after his funeral. And there's one more detail, which is where this stops being abstract. He shared an office and a desk with his wife. Stephanie Cacioppo is a neuroscientist too, and her subject was the exact opposite of his. He studied loneliness. She studied love. They met at a conference in Shanghai, married in 2011, and she called it the perfect meeting of the study of loneliness with the study of love. Then he was gone, and the woman who studied love was living inside her husband's findings. As one newspaper put it a year later, when John died, the practical parts of their shared research took on an urgent personal relevance. She wrote a book about it. She also registered a trial of a drug meant to take the edge off loneliness. The public registry now lists it as terminated, with no data collected, because the lead researcher left the institution. So the field's best answer is still the unsatisfying one. There's no pill. Understanding the alarm doesn't switch it off, and it didn't spare the 2 people who mapped it. So here's what to keep when the studies have gone. The ache is not a metaphor and not a weakness. It's an alarm, running on the hardware that handles physical injury, because losing the group and losing blood were once the same emergency. What you inherited isn't loneliness. It's how loudly that alarm rings in you. It isn't counting who's nearby. It's measuring what's missing. And when it can't be answered, it doesn't switch off. It turns inward, makes people look like threats, and quietly takes your sleep. Loneliness is an alarm, not a weakness, which changes 3 things, all of them from the research you've just watched. When this has been running a while, your read on other people isn't reliable. That's the car alarm in the wind. The certainty that nobody wants you around is being produced by the same alarm that's asking you to go and find them, so the feeling most likely to keep you home is a symptom, not evidence. The alarm measures a gap, not a head count. Another room full of people won't move it. One real conversation might. If you've been trying to fix this by going to more things, you're adjusting the wrong number. If your sleep has quietly fallen apart, look at your connections before your mattress. That's the guard who won't go under. Sleep sits downstream of this more often than people expect. None of that is broken. All of it is a system doing precisely the job it was designed for in a world that stopped matching the job about 2 generations ago. It hurts because it's supposed to hurt. It's supposed to hurt because for almost all of human history, it was the difference between living and not. You weren't built for this world. You were built for a different one. And the ache is the receipt.